Tulsi Gabbard out torching Obama. My gosh, this is bad, guys. Actually, this is like, I'm looking at this and going, wow, like I feel like I'm in Banana Republic territory because this is not the kind of stuff that the American government should be doing. But Obama apparently had some kind of meeting. He brought everybody together, all the big honchos, Brennan, Comey, all these people, because they had to come up with some kind of solution to manage Trump once he came to office after he miraculously won the election. You know what they figured out? They figured out that the Russians had nothing to do with him winning. The Russians, they did love being little SHI, you-know-what disturbers. And they loved getting a big giant divide in America, and that was part of their goal, but they didn't really care who won. That was the conclusion of the intelligence, but you wouldn't know it. You certainly wouldn't know. For goodness sakes, we had to listen to Jimmy Carter. The late Jimmy Carter get on stage and tell us that Donald Trump won because of the Russians, that they sort of handpicked him. And then we had to hear all about this dossier, the dirty dossier, for goodness sakes, that read like a thing straight out of the National Enquirer. Anyway, Tulsi is all over this. She is declassifying the documents. They just came out. I read through them on the plane all the way over New York to Ireland. I didn't sleep a wink, in part because these were very interesting and also in part because somebody was snoring next to me. And I put my earplugs in and I put the headphones on and wow, this lady could snore. I'm telling you, like, wow. And she was like a relatively young woman. Man, I don't know what's in her future. But anyway, I read through all of this, 114 pages. I'm going to let Tulsi, however, outline how big a freaking deal this thing is.
It's not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue with such significant impact that it should concern every American because it has to do with the fabric and integrity of our democratic republic. That we had a situation here where in the months leading up to the 2016 election, the intelligence community assessed, and this is what the documents detail, the intelligence community assessed essentially Russia doesn't have the tools, the capability, or the intent to try to change the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. Donald Trump pulls off a historic victory against Hillary Clinton in November of 2016. Even in the days after that election, the intelligence community continued their consistent assessment that reflected the same thing in the months leading up to the election. All of a sudden, in the early days of December, there was a president's daily brief that was drafted. This is put together by the different elements of the intelligence community that reflected that same assessment. Russia did not try to hack the election, in essence. That PDB, that document, was pulled hours before it was supposed to be published for the president to see that following morning. That document was never published until we released it yesterday. One day later, President Obama calls a meeting of his National Security Council, his top officials, to be held on what they called a sensitive topic. And the results of that meeting, which we released yesterday, and these over 100 documents that talk about in detail how President Obama and his team, he directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election that President Trump won in November of 2016. This document was then used as the foundation for everything that came next. It was essentially a years-long coup that was launched against President Trump before he even had the opportunity to take his oath of office and be sworn in as President of the United States. So, as you know, there was a Mueller investigation that went on for years, cost taxpayers nearly $40 million. There were 2 congressional impeachments. President Trump and almost every member of his family were smeared and attacked, faced lawsuits, depositions. High-level officials were investigated, some were arrested and put in jail. The list goes on and on about the ramifications of this, but foundational to it all was the fact that we had in President Obama and his leadership team people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016, and therefore cooked up this treasonous conspiracy to, again, try to effectively, and they did effectively, launch a years-long coup against the sitting president of the United States.
It's crazy, right? I mean, it's like literally absolutely crazy. And I know this is taking us back, but we got to go back. We got to go back because you can't actually, and she's right, like regardless of party, you can't actually have a system where whoever's in charge gets to call all the shots and gets to make all the decisions and therefore gets to control all power for the foreseeable future. I mean, this is wild, wild what went down. And this is why Brennan, Comey, others might be facing serious criminal charges. I mean, she's talking treason here. This is a very, very big deal, you guys, okay? A very big deal. And when you prove this out, what bothers me is that we went through all those investigations and nobody could really get to the root of what she just declassified. Remember back when Donald Trump actually sued and tried to get some of this information? And I remember Kash Patel saying, like, regardless of whether it saw the day in court, the most important thing was that they could get to first base so that they could get the due diligence, the discovery, if you would, on what exactly went down. And now that he's in office, he did come forward and say, I am going to declassify all of Crossfire Hurricane. And so this is what Tulsi is coming out with now. And it's a big deal. I want to go to the question of whether or not people are going to be prosecuted. So that's when the ball is going to go into Pam Bondi's court. And we know she's busy, but this is a biggie. And Tulsi was asked this again on Fox this morning, just a short time ago. Let's listen together to the answer.
So as voters, can we feel confident that we will actually see charges, do you think, out of this?
I'm not a lawyer. We're referring all of this to the Department of Justice. I know that Attorney General Pam Bondi is committed to bringing about justice to those who have broken the law. And in this case, again, what these documents detail, to me, in my view, cannot be explained as anything but a treasonous conspiracy. This is not so different from what we saw under George W. Bush, when we saw that manufactured intelligence claiming there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that kicked off a war that changed our country, that changed the lives of so many people like myself who went and served in those wars. The implications of manufactured intelligence are real. I would even say that what we are seeing here has an even greater impact than what we've seen in the past, because it speaks again to the foundation of our Constitution and our democratic republic, which is why accountability is so critical.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember when Ben Rhodes, who was one of Obama's top guys, was quoted as talking about the echo chamber? In other words, you could just put something out there into the quote-unquote echo chamber, and it would bounce from reporter to reporter to reporter, and before you knew it, suddenly it was true. Was this what they were trying to do? It's just that the whole thing was so bizarre. And I'm going to go back and just remind you of the chain, okay? So you're talking Hillary Clinton. Actually, in fairness, this opposition research was initially commissioned by someone in the GOP because people were running against Trump and they wanted to have something to run against him with. And so they started down this path, and then they were like, no, okay, forget about it. We don't want it. And so then the company that had been commissioned, that would have been Fusion GPS, they had already done work on this. And so they started shopping it around. And so they took it to Hillary Clinton's law firm, Perkins Coie. And Perkins Coie scooped it up. So they bought it. And so the project moved forward, and Christopher Steele was hired. He was former MI6, and he was the ex-British spy who then had some contacts, kind of, I guess, enough to kind of make it seem like it was something in Russia. And Christopher Steele went out and hired some of these contacts and had them put this piece of garbage. And it is a piece of garbage. I don't know if you guys have ever read it. I have. I'm like, whoo. Like, there's no way this is intel. Like, there's no way, like, anybody would actually take this and read this as a document that's part of, some kind of intel file, because it's so bizarre. It's like straight out of the National Enquirer. That's how it reads. Like, for a 10-year-old that has 10-year-olds aren't like that. So, but it's the grade level of like a fifth grader, okay? Like, this is not a well-written piece of documentation, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's pretty poorly written, and it's written for somebody with a very small mind, and you just want to like sit there and with bated breath, oh my gosh, so what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? Like I said, like the National Enquirer. So I knew immediately when I read this thing, this was not any kind of real intelligence. So why wouldn't our government have had the same questions that I had? Because as a reporter, I'm always saying, okay, like who's in on this? What is their agenda? What do they want? I'm always trying to understand this, which is going to bring us to our next story very shortly, the Wall Street Journal and Donald Trump suing Rupert Murdoch. You have to understand the agendas of the people involved. And so in the case of this Steele dossier, I'm like, what is this person trying to do? Because it didn't seem like they were out there trying to protect the country. It seemed like they were trying to do a hit job on someone. And you could have just put anybody's name in there. It was really weird. And so Hillary buys this thing and it gets fed into the food chain. And the next thing you know, instead of just saying, okay, well, the Russians tried to interfere in our election. And by the way, they do that, okay? Like, we're all big boys here. We do that too. We actually do it kind of well. So well that other countries are really mad at us because we do it so well. So we have to anticipate that they're going to do that to us as well. Okay, like that's kind of how the game is played. And you try and protect however you can. But ultimately, yeah, they're going to do that. And so they're going to try and interfere, and they're going to try and drive a wedge right through us. And boy, oh boy, if anybody won that thing, it was the Russians. It was Putin. He succeeded because look what Obama allegedly turned around and did. And so this is a big deal. And I'm really glad he's there in office right now, because we have to clean this up and we have to prevent this from happening to any future candidate. Who the heck would want to run for office? I mean, given all of that, right?